Thank you for your warm introduction. Honorable Director General Audrey Azoulay of UNESCO, Honorable Yoon Ham, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Mr. David Acharena, Director General of UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Honorable Do Sung-hoon, Superintendent of Incheon Metropolitan City, honorable members of the National Assembly, honorable mayors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities. I'm happy that this timely and dynamic conference is being held at a juncture when the world most needs be together, wisdom, and boost cooperation at all levels. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are now facing one of the greatest upheaval in human history as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And along the way, we have learned many things. This includes the fact that the earth and mankind are all connected, and that the solution to future global challenges can only be focused when the world leaders together in cooperation, partnership, and collaboration. However, these were difficult conditions for the millions of refugees who live in cramped spaces with poor sanitation facilities. They were all the more difficult for the 3 billion people across the globe who does not even have access to hand washing facilities. Indeed, if we look around us, we will find that many are exposed to vulnerable health and sanitation conditions, or may have difficulty physically distancing themselves because they have to make a living or for other reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, the public health crisis we are experiencing today was not caused by a lack of capital, expertise, or solutions. Rather, it was caused by a lack of domestic and international insights, planning, and cooperation. Each country's healthcare system should be grounded on the principles of justice and equity. And to this end, we need to enhance the international support and cooperation now more than ever before, so that we can make our health systems sustainable and advance global efforts toward achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. In the present super uncertain era, coping with the climate crisis and achieving the SDG is of paramount importance. These two goals are no longer optional, but indeed mandatory tasks that we must fulfill successfully. Underpinned with the spirit of coexistence and co-prosperity, we must achieve these goals to pass on better and safer world to the next generation. Today, I'd like to suggest 3 ways to ensure what we achieve this. First, we need to respond swiftly to the climate crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic can be said to be partly the result of the destruction of the ecosystem and the climate crisis, which were triggered by reckless development by human beings. Pope Francis one day told me insightfully, he said, I quote, "God always forgives. Human beings sometimes forgive, but nature never forgives." How insightful it is. Indeed, the climate crisis is a true existential challenge that directly affects human life. Quite simply, it is a matter of our survival of human beings, and continuity of our planet Earth, the only planet where human beings can live on. It is also related to the associated issues of prolonged poverty, lack of resources, jobs, and refugee insecurity. With this in mind, me versus you mentality, me and you mentality is meaningless when responding to the climate crisis. Instead, it must be all of us versus the climate crisis. In this connection, I am of the view that we must expediently step up our collective efforts to cut global emissions and implement the Paris Climate Change Agreement. During my 10 years of service as the Secretary General of the United Nations, I have prioritized climate change and elevated its importance to the top of the global agenda. The Paris Agreement, signed by 195 state parties, offers us a clear game plan to confront the serious threats to our planet. I still believe the Paris Climate Change Agreement offers us our best hope and game plan to persevere over the serious threats to our planet, but we must urgently step up implementation efforts. As I have been repeatedly saying, we don't have a plan B, because we don't have a planet B. As far as I know and we know, there is no other planet where we can move in. And we must no longer ignore the progressively louder warnings from nature and environment. I have been often repeating that nature has its own ways. Nature is warning us strongly. Therefore, we have to listen to the voice and warning of the nature. As such, we should shift from our current development-focused paradigm to an inherently sustainable paradigm that reflects life and considers the ecological crisis. But coping with the deepening climate crisis requires all the parties to play their role. In short, drastic change must be brought to every level of all societies. Above all, we must provide the future generations with more active education on the environment and equitable development. For instance, Italy has mandated 33 hours of education on climate change and sustainable development in the yearly curriculum of elementary and secondary schools. I expect that such environment education throughout life will be of great help in encouraging citizens, including growing children, to enjoy the forests and mountains, to cherish nature and earth, and to act more responsibly for the next generation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that education on the environment and sustainable development will create an opportunity for members of the society to work more closely together to examine, discuss, and find appropriate alternatives to various visions and concrete action plans, such as carbon neutrality scenario. As suggested by UNESCO Education for Sustainable Development for 2020, a change in individual behaviors and larger transformation of social structures are pressing. Let us remind ourselves of the fact that nature does not negotiate with the humans, and we humans are the ones who are in urgent need and taking immediate action. It is thus very meaningful that on August 31st, the Korean government stipulated the Framework Act on Education as follows, I quote, "The state and local government shall provide all citizens with an education on climate change and the environment," unquote. In this regard, I'd like to thank deeply to Deputy Prime Minister Yoon Hye for taking this action into a law. Thank you very much. Let us give a big encouragement. Ladies and gentlemen, I truly hope that these provisions will be reflected in our next revision of school curriculums so that all citizens will be able to receive an education on climate change and the environment. Second, we need to create a cultural climate that allows lifelong learning for everyone in the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the polarization and inequality of education around the world. While the wealthier continued their education online and in alternative places, the world's poorest were completely excluded, not only from education, but also from free meals. Education is the only way out of poverty for the latter. And among them are many adolescent girls for whom school is their bastion and hope to protect themselves from forced marriages. Quality education is also required to help children grow and contribute as global citizens. I truly believe that thanks to quality education, I myself was able to become Secretary General of the United Nations, even though my childhood was overshadowed by the Korean War. I studied on the textbooks printed by UNESCO. And these textbooks, which I have studied, are now on display in the headquarters of UNESCO in Paris. And I thank UNESCO for their consideration on this. Under this backdrop, ladies and gentlemen, the state, local governments, and cities must all join forces to carefully promote education that leaves no one behind. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the role of advanced technologies, such as internet and digital devices, has become critical for during COVID-19 pandemic. It is now time, however, to contemplate how to connect these technologies with the sustainability of our cities and our planet. For this, we need to strengthen digital literacy competencies. Digital literacy originally referred to the understanding and ability to use digital platforms but recently it has come to include the ability to think critically, to solve problems, and to communicate and work together in order to creatively express one's thoughts and knowledge and create content. Today, we live in an era where information can be seamlessly delivered through Zoom and other technologies. As long as a digital education is guaranteed, everyone in the world can easily access and utilize digital information. Thus, I hope that today's occasion will serve as an invaluable opportunity to remind us of the importance of education and learning, which are universal values of mankind. Third, we need to promote mutual understanding and enhance tolerance through global citizenship education. Today, the global community faces various challenges, including climate change, pandemics, terrorism, poverty, and threats to children's and women's rights. And to solve these difficult problems, we need to provide integrated education based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We need a global citizenship education that embraces and understands diverse cultures, religions, and people. To date, education has largely focused on nurturing experts for the economic growth and national interest of individual countries. Moving forward, however, education must completely change to consider different identities at the industrial, social, individual, national, and global levels. And this should be done with a view towards fostering global citizens who can better reflect on the lives of individuals and society, embrace different ethnic groups and countries, and have a sense of responsibility to build peace and protect the planet. Global citizens do not build walls between people, they build bridges that connect them. If we all become global citizens and strive to address global issues with both passion and compassion, I am confident that we will be much better equipped to more easily overcome those challenges and global crises as they come our way. This is exactly why I established the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens in Vienna, Austria, 2018, and the Ban Ki-moon Foundation for a Better Future in Seoul, Korea, 2019. The key to global citizenship education lies in caring for others and a heart that emphasizes with others and considers others as true equals will fuel the sustainable power that will be needed to help change our neighbors, communities, and the world for the better. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude. Former US President John F. Kennedy once said, I quote, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one which we intend to win," unquote. It surely will not be easy to solve the pressing future challenges that mankind will face. But we must accomplish this for our own generations, our own sustainable future, and that of future generations. And if we work together with patience and perseverance, we will indeed succeed. I hope that today's conference will be an occasion to find new opportunities regarding infectious diseases and climate change, and see hope in how the global community can advance towards a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, let us work together to make this world sustainable and transcend our future to our future generations. This is our moral and political responsibility living in this era. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.